you have success with one thing, I would say, especially early on, you should really try to make that thing more successful.
Hey, my name is Felix Tia, and I'm the host of Shopify Masters, a weekly podcast powered by Shopify, the easiest way to sell online, in person, anywhere in between. Each week, we invite entrepreneurs like you to share what they've learned growing successful e-commerce businesses. In this episode, you'll learn how to figure out what your customers care about, why you need to look out for new addressable markets, and the lessons learned from working with the wrong projects and people. Before our show, I wanted to chat about Shopify Ping. It's a free live chat app for Android or iOS devices, and it even works on iPads. Did you know that shoppers who use live chats are almost 3 times more likely to complete their purchase? With Shopify Ping, you can share products, exclusive discount codes, and help customers make purchases instantly. For more information, visit shopify.com/chat. Today, I'm joined by Albert Matheny from Promix. Promix sells premium nutrition products made with farm-direct ingredients designed to support your optimal health and performance, and was started in 2011 and based out of Florida. Welcome, Albert.
Hey, thanks for having me, Felix.
Yeah, so the idea behind the business all came from your own personal need. Tell us more about that. What was that?
Yeah, short story was I grew up in Gainesville, Florida. Was kind of into athletics my whole life. Ended up running track and field at the University of Florida. And during my time there, I studied exercise physiology, studied food science. I basically graduated with undergrad and graduate degrees in exercise physiology, kinesiology, along with a degree in food science, human nutrition. I kind of continued that path and got my licensure as a registered dietitian. So I really just wanted to, kind of understand every aspect of food nutrition, how it plays a role in human performance. And I competed with USA Triathlon for a bit after that. And so, that's kind of, I was serving a need for myself, and then kind of started working with some teammates and kind of just grew from there.
Yeah, so tell us more about the first kind of creations that you're making. What were you making for yourself exactly?
Yeah, it started out with, at Florida, it's the home of Gatorade, so that was like, Gainesville is a pretty small town relative. It's basically got a great, set of sports teams. And then Gatorade is kind of like a big beacon out of Gainesville. And so I was always kind of inspired by Gatorade, but, I think it's a good example of where people fit kind of in the direct to consumer landscape. Is you kind of have these big companies. Gatorade's now part of, PepsiCo and things like that. So they've definitely changed their formula and different things over the years. And they kind of focus on different aspects of their business. So when I looked at the ingredients that are in their products and things, I thought I could do a better job in utilizing what I knew from the science side. And one of my professors had actually been at the Gatorade Sports Science Institute. So I really just tried to basically kind of make the new version of Gatorade initially. So it was a carbohydrate type beverage. I was an endurance athlete, so I was really focused on that market. And then proteins was another thing. There was other proteins on the market, but nobody had like as clean a formula. And kind of my concept was, why is what I, cook for myself at home, or if I, go to the farmer's market or something like that, why is that a different kind of set of, ideas around that from what I take when I'm competing or my supplement? So applying that same kind of, filtering mechanism to what goes into your supplements and everything like that, the same ideas you have around what makes a great product from a farmer's market, and apply that to supplements.
Yeah. So when you first made the drink, did you just have for yourself, or you said you also had teammates? Were they also trying it out as well?
Yeah. At first, if you're trying something new, you kind of keep to yourself, you get, tweak it a little bit, so you're like, okay, this is not bad. So that's basically how it started was, I'd bring it to practice, have people try it, see what they thought. And then kind of from there, like I was using it and other people started using it. And, then I just kind of said, well, I think I could turn this into something more than just for me and my friends.
Yeah, so tell us more about that. Like, so when you had noticed that you and your friends were enjoying and getting a benefit out of the product, what were the next steps to turn this into a business or something at a larger scale?
Yeah. Something I think, I guess when I first started out, I didn't have a lot of business mentors really in my life per se, but I had, kind of read some books, and I was of the philosophy that I really wanted to, if you say you wanted to run a restaurant, I really wanted to work in every position within the company to really know how to run a great business. And so when I started, I set up my own production facility from the ground up. I walked into a local coffee roaster that I knew and just said, hey, could I, if I go through all the applications and procedures and set everything up properly, can I run production for my products in the evening? Because they had kind of the same packaging equipment. So I think that was something I definitely didn't know how else to do it. 2011, it was a completely different landscape in terms of, I know it's much easier to launch products now. There's tons of co-packers and all these different things out there for people to resource, and the internet's a lot more developed in terms of finding, companies and things. That market has boomed. But when I started out, it wasn't something that you could just kind of Google really. So that's how it started. And that has really helped me. One, just, when you build something from really the ground up like that, and you're actually packaging the products yourselves, you really learn kind of all the aspects of it. Not only from how to do it right, what can go wrong, the cost involved. So yeah, that was how it started.
Yeah, I can imagine that once you step away from either, being on site to run the production facility, you still had a lot of learnings that you can apply towards hiring others and bring others on to continue to create this, high quality product. So tell us more about that. What were some of the things that you learned? Like what are some of the things that you learned that you applied as you scale up the business?
I mean, there were some practical learnings, from a basic side. And I think anyone that is an entrepreneur going into business, whatever you're selling, you just kind of learn some things along the way. You start to realize there can be a lot more complexity to things. The things that look simple, or why a box is sized such a way, or a bag is like this. So I had initially, you run into problems with the type of packaging materials you're using. And again, the ecosystem that exists now wasn't there. So I was, looking for, coffee type bags and things. Now there's a whole, tons of suppliers that really specialize in protein type bags and containers or whatever you need. But, so I learned a lot from the small, just manufacturing side of things. But then, a bigger picture too is just realizing the time it takes to do those different aspects, thinking about really how does it scale. When you're working on all the different things, you start to break down, okay, where's my time going? Am I spending all this time shipping products or in packaging? How can I, kind of outsource this and start to focus on what's next and how to grow? So that was, you really just kind of learned by doing, and started to see where your time went and how you could, if you want to grow the business, where your time needs to be focused. Because if you're just doing repetitive tasks that aren't really scaling, then you're going to run out of hours in the day.
Yeah. So at what point did you decide to kind of step away? And you mentioned that you wanted to be someone that can work and understand at every position. What else did you want to kind of dive into to make sure you had a better understanding of it as you were building your business?
Yeah. I think really just trying to break down every component and kind of ask why. If you really want to make something unique or different. And I did, I very much still today, I don't want to make a product that somebody else could just make the same exact product. I want to make sure I'm offering something different, differentiated, and offers I think it's the best product on the market kind of for that consumer or whatever it is. So
yeah, well, you said that you always offer something that was differentiated. How do you make sure that you're always going to stay on top of this and that you are different than what else is on the market?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, that is something I've seen over the years and I think you see it in everything, the market evolves. So you obviously, if you're going to stand out, you have to have a special product in some way. When I first started on the market, I can really say that, when you said grass-fed whey protein in 2011, nobody knew what that was. There was, it was a term, grass-fed was a term that was really pretty relegated to things like farmers markets, and you go to mainstream grocery stores, and that was not something that was a focus back in that time period. So, over the years that became more mainstream, and it's almost kind of like table stakes now for like a premium protein product to really have some, identity around sourcing or ethics around production or whatever that might be. So, as far as differentiating, just constantly evolving and saying, how can I make this product better? And you kind of can look at that from a lot of different angles, from ingredient side, from a production side, packaging, shipping, environmental impact. So just kind of like always saying, where can I improve in all the different aspects, customer experience, whatever it is.
Yeah. How do you know what your customers care about when you see all these different ways to make your product better? How do you know which ones to choose to focus on?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think people have different takes on this. And, I love to read about other entrepreneurs' success and try to learn from them. And people go two different routes. You kind of either go, I know what's best for the customer, or you go, I'm going to listen to the customers and build what they want. I think it's really a mix, but what I've found is that the most successful products I've had have just been something that I really believed in. I think if you know your market, for me, it's easy because I'm really passionate specifically about what I'm doing. Like, I really do care about these products. And so I'm always kind of like paying attention to things, reading things, aware of kind of where like health trends are going. So I just think about, where is the ball going to be next and why does that matter? So I don't listen so much to the consumer feedback, because I think if you're trying to get ahead, the consumers aren't even asking for what is next because they don't know it's an option. So I think you need to look at different industries and say, wow, that's really cool what they're doing in, I don't know, furniture or like whatever it might be, and apply it. Say, can I apply that to my industry? Why isn't what I'm doing that? So that's how I've kind of approached trying to stay ahead, is just focus on what you really believe in, what you're passionate about, and then kind of learn from other areas and see, like, can you iterate in a way that no one is even asking for.
Yeah, I like that. That's definitely a different perspective, and it's that famous Henry Ford quote about, if you ask customers what they want, they say a faster horse, right? So yeah, there is some kind of lagging by looking backwards at what your customers want, right? And you're saying look outside your industry. So you can talk more about that. Like, what are do you have any examples of evolutions that you've made in your business, and talk about like where you found inspiration from to make those improvements?
Yeah. So as far as, where to look for inspiration, I really do think outside of whatever industry you're in, look outside of there, because I think it becomes an echo chamber. I would say rarely are big brands doing the things that are new. I mean, you certainly see that in like a big way in the marketplace in terms of big brands like to buy little brands, because the little brands are usually doing something more niche or just more innovative or different. Or really what it is, I think, too, is you are betting on what seems like a small addressable market. I think like when you start to think about bigger business picture of things, people talk about the total addressable market, or TAM. And if you're trying to address the biggest market, you're probably not making something unique. And so I think the innovation occurs when you identify what will be like a new addressable market. Who are these people that are going to want something? And you create this thing, and then it kind of like, in some ways, like creates a market. Obviously, if you totally create the market, like, I don't know, like an Uber or something, then, you're a genius. Awesome. And you're probably crushing it. But I think there's a lot of ways that you can just say, all right, well, what's something I can do to like take this up like a notch? Like, if you look at what's available and you say, how do I make this thing that's a 10 and make it an 11? And that doesn't have to be, more premium something. It can be like an innovation in a different area. So looking at your business and saying, if it's a t-shirt, maybe it's not like buying the more expensive material, but maybe it's like, how are you shipping the product that's different, and how is the customer experience different, or the social experience, or whatever it is. And like I said before, like looking at other industries, I think like, t-shirts are a great one in terms of, there are, a lot of people can make t-shirts. So if you are differentiating yourself, it's really like, is it a brand thing, or is it like, what component of your brand really makes your brand stand out, and it can be something really small that seems niche, but if you're going to gain traction initially and not just spend tons of money on marketing, you should be niche. Like those are the people, that's how you're going to get found initially. That's what I would say is like, don't be afraid to go after something that you really believe in, that seems like, like, I don't even know if there's other people out there that care about this thing, but if you do a great job with it, you're going to get found that way. Like you're not going to rank number one on Google the first day, but if you do something that's unique, somebody's going to find that's looking for that.
Can you call out some improvements that you've made for your brand that you feel has separated yourself the most from the competitors?
Yeah, I think, one thing that I'm working on, kind of every day, but really a little bit about what I try to bring to the brand. Like, I think, I've spent my whole kind of professional life in nutrition. I have a gym in New York. I've, trained people for 10 plus years. I studied all this stuff for many years. And I'm an athlete as well. So I, really do kind of live and breathe it and stay up on everything that's happening. So for me, like, that's a point of differentiation for Promix is, I can bring that to the table and interacting with customers. Like, I still answer customer emails. I still help people with their nutrition and things like that. So I know that other brands out there are not giving that kind of level of customer service or like personal attention. I think the way that, shout out to my partner, Devin. He, is an athlete and just a great community kind of leader. He and my other buddy, Chris, they do a great job just interacting with a really authentic community. They go out and reach out to trainers and work with people with high integrity. And it's a real like partnership, and they value the brand, because part of the differentiation has been just finding individuals that really represent your brand well with high integrity. Because if you can create a brand that people want to be associated with, it's going to tell an authentic story. So it's not about, anytime I think I've tried to say, can I scale this in an impersonal way? Like, can I hire an agency to do this or do that? You're going to get like a pretty generic response. And especially in a market like nutrition products, that it's fairly simple to get started with a nutrition company, similar to a t-shirt company, for example. But to stand out is difficult. And so if you kind of just take white label product, white label services and everything, you're not going to have success. You really do need to, back to what I said initially, like address your business from those initial core points all the way up the chain. And, if you can find really great people to work with, then you can kind of start to scale it. But definitely doing everything yourself initially, so you get a sense of it and you have your hand on it.
Yeah, you had mentioned that one of the best ways to innovate and to improve the business is to identify these new addressable markets. Can you say more about that? Like, what do you do to try to always be kind of on the lookout for new addressable markets?
I think you have to look outside the industry that you're in, whatever that is. You have to say, what's already going on in your industry is exactly that. It's already happening in your industry. Someone that is in your market is already doing something if you see them do it. So you need to kind of synthesize for yourself what is happening outside of there that hasn't happened in your industry, and say, I'm going to bring that to my industry, whatever that is. If it's, I don't know, if it's in nutrition, maybe you're somehow connecting telehealth. You look at like, a company like Hims, who has done an amazing job, like their marketing was amazing. They've obviously done extremely well. Maybe you look at that and say, hey, no one is doing that in beauty. can I take some learnings from Hims and apply it to, beauty in like a certain niche of the beauty market or whatever. So that's, I think, a really cool way too to, meet other entrepreneurs and just have great conversations is if you're functioning in a different market, you just have a different, like, it's a different world or a different echo chamber of like, oh, everyone's doing this and, hair care products. And then somebody from the nutrition market might be like, wow, that's a great idea. I never thought about that. And then maybe you can innovate in that area. So
Yeah, it makes sense. So once you've identified these different ways to innovate or differentiate, how do you make those differentiators clear? Like, what do you do in your marketing and everything from your packaging to your website to highlight what differentiates you from your competitors?
a big thing is simplicity. I've learned that over the years too. Is I think for anyone that is good at a certain area, whatever it might be, if you're good in the gym or good in the classroom or you're a good sailor or a great soccer player or whatever it might be, language around that and the skills around that are really like second nature to you. And if you're talking to other people in those same areas, everything seems kind of obvious. But I think in the marketing side, if you identify some unique kind of propositions that you have for customers or unique values that your brand has or whatever it might be, like make those really, really clear, make it really simple. And I think don't try to highlight too many different things. Like customers need to, it's kind of like consistency and something like McDonald's. Like I think what you can learn from them is like, they're definitely not the best, but they're really consistent and people know what they're going to get and they know what McDonald's is and what that stands for and what your brand is. So I think that's a huge thing is if you identify something that's unique about your brand, that needs to be like kind of central and core to your brand and make that the message that customers hear and they know that, okay, Promix stands for no artificial anything. It's a simple, digestible thing that speaks to a lot of different values.
Yeah, awesome. So we talked about where the business is today, how it's grown to where it's at today. Talk to us more about how you got that early traction. Like, how were you able to get your first customers beyond, your friends and your colleagues?
Yeah, initial traction. So this is honestly 2011. Sorry if I don't know the exact launch date of Shopify, but it wasn't as big as it is now. And in 2011, I wasn't on a Shopify store. And Amazon was kind of our main channel. And that was a great place to learn. And I think it's still a great place to learn. There's no doubt that I prefer selling on Shopify. Like the connection you have with your customers there and everything is amazing. But as far as kind of market learning, if you're going to launch a Shopify store, you can learn a ton from Amazon because it's kind of like a, search directory for products. So if you have a product idea and you search it on Amazon and you don't see it there, then, maybe that's an interesting thing to pursue, or it can also like validate a market idea. So if you go search whatever it is, you want to make a new brownie recipe or something, and you go on Amazon and you search kind of like whatever those terms are, maybe it's like a keto brownie recipe that has nuts or something, that's your idea. If you can see on Amazon that, okay, there is demand for this, but maybe there's a product that isn't great and you're like reading reviews and you're like, okay, people obviously don't like this aspect of it. I can improve on that. So for me, sorry, that was a bit of an aside, but early on, like I got traction on Amazon because I was niched and people were searching there. Like Amazon, even more so now, has such a large set of eyes on it that if you can earn customers on Amazon, get their attention, validate a market, those customers may end up buying from you directly because a lot of people prefer to transact, direct with the shop. Maybe you're offering them, more personalized service or, just a better customer experience going direct. So initial traction for me came from being in a niche market on Amazon where there's, high volume of customers, getting a brand kind of established there. And then customers from there ended up seeking out the brand outside of Amazon because of you can create, maybe you're connecting through social or whatever that is, but you definitely don't want to be just another brand on Amazon. You need to have your own brand because ultimately you don't own that customer set. And So if you can get traction on Amazon and then build a brand that lives outside of just a transaction on a website, through a social community or whatever that is, then I think you'll be able to transition that momentum over to Shopify, and then you can really grow a business.
Yeah, so that traction from a marketplace like Amazon, or could be Etsy or eBay, some other platform out there where you're getting this kind of free traffic. Obviously, you have to do things right in order to have your products show up, high in these essentially product search engines on like Amazon. You get build the relationship with the customer there, then they might seek you out directly or find you on social, and then repeat buy from you from your own website. Is that what you're doing today as well, or are there other methods that you're focused on these days to bring in new customers?
Yeah, I think nowadays, like we've gotten a good amount of traction on both platforms. We still work with both, and there's different people, different reasons, different people like one platform or the other. Amazon is just really convenient for people. So Shopify, if you have that direct relationship with the customer and they value that a little bit more than their convenience, or there's other reasons they might like to just buy direct, then that can be great. But nowadays, we're really focused on the brand outside of I guess the sales channels. Like, we know that if people kind of fall in love with the brand or understand what the brand is about, understand what problem it solves for them, and typically that's happening through social media, where they see people that are kind of thought leaders in the space. And I think be specific about the area that you're in. Like, just going to work with some social creator that has a ton of followers isn't going to move the needle for you the way you think it might. They need to have, and this may be obvious, but they need to have an audience that is the audience that is going to buy your product. So that's an area where I think I've been fortunate is, I work in the nutrition and training industry. And so all my friends and everything are these people. And so if we work with them, they're people who we have a good relationship with, and the people that follow them are following them for their fitness and nutrition content and things. And they believe what they're doing, and they follow them. And so if they make a recommendation, then it does convert, basically.
Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying the show, please leave us a review on iTunes to let us know what you think or what you'd like to hear more of. Now, let's get back to the interview. Awesome. Now, speaking of working with the right people, one thing I mentioned to us prior to this interview was about working with the wrong people and how that really kind of hampers your success and your progress. Tell us more about that. What kind of experiences have you learned from?
I think, one thing I mentioned earlier was definitely like, if you try to just outsource things and you don't really know where you want to put your focus and energy, and you're just trying to solve a problem, or you hear about something, frankly, like on a podcast, and you don't really research it for yourself and think, okay, does this really matter for my business? Then you're going to end up spending not only a lot of money on things, but just a lot of time. Like, to work with an agency for whatever it might be, is if it's ad creative or anything like that, it takes a huge amount of time. And so that's time that you're not putting into something else. So I think making sure you're doing the basics and try to, do as much as you can, like get something to work yourself if you can, or work with someone individually. But I think you end up in the kind of world of marketing, you can spend a lot of money, but if you aren't really driving the boat, I don't think you're going to get the results you hope for. I've never seen that work out. Yeah. And in similar veins, you also mentioned about working on the wrong projects. So I think this is an important area about how to stay focused. So tell us more about that. Like, what are some of the experiences you've learned from that? Yeah. I think you can very easily, people will have, here's just like a basic rule, I think, of business that I would say is, tell me your thoughts, but I think the dream business is you have one SKU and you just sell a ton of it. Like, that's kind of the dream. Every time you add a new product and different things, you add complexity to your business. So, if you have success with one thing, I would say, especially early on, you should really try to make that thing more successful, because it's kind of like very few people have hit after hit if you end up having a hit and you're like, wow, people are really liking this, it's going really well, 100%, I would say focus on doing more of that and just take that and run with it as long as you can. Don't just go wide initially, because just because you made an awesome hat doesn't mean your customers want a shirt or that you can make an awesome shirt. So I think that's the beauty of the internet, is the scaling aspect. And if you have something that is really connecting with people, you should 100% focus your time and energy on that, instead of saying, I'm going to try and service all these needs from the customer. So I guess from my own experience, like I've taken, something that's a passion of mine, but is not squarely in my like differentiated skill set. So I made chocolate bars at one point. I think they're amazing chocolate bars. People love them, but am I the best person to make chocolate? Is that really a differentiated point for my brand? Is that really something my customers really want? Do they think of your brand as, is Promix a chocolate brand? I don't think so. You really have to have an unbelievable amount of scale before you kind of go wide like that. So I would say stay narrow. If something's working, really run with it. And just, stay in the areas where you're like, I know I can do this better than anyone else. And if there's any opportunities, especially early on, like with perishable products or whatever, like you can get burned really quickly on shelf life with things. So it's great if you can, put all that in your head and think about how much it costs to store something. Is this product going to go bad? Am I going to have loss, or whatever the things are? Like you really do have to account for all that stuff early on. So don't go bigger earlier. Just kind of build, over time if you can.
Yeah, that's a great point about how if you have success, the almost immediate inclination for most entrepreneurs is, let me try doing something else. I think it's because there's just more excitement around adding a new product line, right? When you have one success already, you're like, let me expand rather than doubling down and making that one thing more successful. Can you talk to us more about that? Once you've learned that, how, for your specific situation, how did you figure out how to make that one thing more successful?
This is kind of a cool thing for people listening to think about, especially if you're newer in business, is like, understand the kind of business person you are. Like, I think a lot of people are creative or passionate about something, and that's why they get into it. But like you said, like you may really just like to make kind of products and do different things, and it is exciting. And so if you keep that mindset and you don't evolve it, you're going to run into the problem of just going wide and not focusing on what's working. And so for some people, that might mean you need to find a partner or someone that has a different mindset about it, that comes in and says, well, I'm just very analytical. This is selling really well. Why aren't you just focused on this? Why are we trying to do a new product? It should just be all energy here. And that's especially important, from a basic economic standpoint, when you're a newer brand starting out, unless you took in funding and whatnot. Like if you're growing and you're going fast, you're probably investing 100% of what you made back into your business. And going wide, you're not, another thing to just think about is, if you go wide, you're not going to have like a quick cash flow cycle, which does become very important. So say you're selling, a ton of one unit, you're putting 100% back into that. Maybe you have a little bit left over and you're like, I want to try this new product. The new product is probably not going to get a huge velocity like that first product initially. So now you've tied up that cash. And so your other product's going faster. And now you just spent that little bit of extra cash that you could have, doubled down on your other product. So that's, something to really look out for. I definitely made that mistake. And, as far as what have I done to focus on doing more of what's working, is just limiting myself, just saying, hey, you just have to remind yourself every day, if you're a creative person, like, don't go wide. How can you improve what is working? And maybe you can't improve the core product itself, but kind of like the same thing we talked about at the beginning of knowing every part of your business. look at other areas. So, we just made a packaging update that I've been working on for almost a year and a half. It's a 97% plastic free package. Like, that was an area where I said, I think I've made the best product. It's a simple, clean protein. How can I make this better? And I've always wanted to, I've dabbled in different packaging things, and I knew I could innovate on a new package, and I wanted it to be something that no one else was doing. So maybe that's for your business, a package. Maybe it's you call customers. Maybe it's you send them a note, or you have an amazing website, or you crush it on social, or whatever it is. But if you're doing something that's working, focus on it, and then see where all the other parts in that chain that the customer touches that you can improve upon.
Yeah, that's definitely great insight. So I want to talk a little bit about your website now. So you've been in business now, we had mentioned starting 2011. So over basically a decade now. So I'm sure your website has evolved many times since then. Talk to us about some of the changes that you guys have made to the website that have had the biggest impact on sales.
Definitely simplicity again. It's the same message as the physical product side. Like, think about your digital product, and people are increasingly less kind of focused, and they want what they want quickly, and they need to understand what you're about, especially if you're a new customer, like, immediately. And that's even more important if it's coming from if you're trying to run ads or anything like that. Like, the immediate awareness of what you're offering, how it's different. Like, you can call it a hook or whatever, but if you just think about how, say you have word of mouth, and you and I are talking, and we're like, wow, have you tried these shoes? They're awesome. And then you go to the website, maybe you're like a little bit more engaged because your buddy Albert said, hey, Felix, these shoes are great. And you kind of like, you're willing to spend more time, and maybe the website's not perfect because it's some new brand, and you kind of like poke around, you finally get a product. But if you're kind of just advertising and there's no strong referral, like a friend to friend, if you don't get what the product is immediately and how it's different and better, you're going to bounce, And so with the website, it's just been refining kind of the message and making it really clear what you're offering to the customer. And then I would say, again, if you break down your website from different touch points, from copy to images to, just overall user experience and how the site is organized, like, I have a hand in all that stuff. And, shout out to Juan and Sunny, who are amazing, and Ryan. But if you can improve any of those points, it makes a difference. If you can, maybe you took some photos a while ago, like, if you can improve those photos, do it. It'll make a difference, and it doesn't mean you should early on invest tons of money. I certainly did not. I fully bootstrapped the business, and I certainly didn't have great photos when I first started. It was like me taking photos and, cropping out the background and things like that. But as you grow your business, or if you start out ideally with like a very limited selection of products, like, put a lot of effort into all those touch points, because it makes a difference. So make your, basically your value proposition very clear, your story, what you're selling, who you are, what it is. And then just try to take all those things that are like, hey, this looks good, to, hey, this looks great, from copy to organization or whatever it is.
Yeah, one thing I noticed too on the website is this protein calculator. It's displayed prominently in the when you on the kind of above the fold when you hit the web page, the landing page for the first time, the main part of the site, and then also in the header throughout the site. Tell us more about that. Like, what was the idea behind creating this protein calculator?
That was one that I had actually been working with a SEO firm, and they had been giving me all sorts of recommendations. And I think from like a purely technical perspective, if you have no background in kind of web design or anything like that, but if you work with a good or reasonably good developer, like, they probably have some sense of SEO. This was a completely non agency generated idea. This was something that from actually, like we talked about, like, separate industries. So as a trainer and a dietitian, like, people, the number one goal, the number one question I had people asking me was like, well, what do I eat? You know, how much protein do I need? And I really identified protein as like a huge thing. And this is not sales. This is like totally as a dietitian speaking without selling any product. Like if people understand and intake the correct amount of protein, they generally are going to have better energy. They're going to feel better. They're going to eat, quote, better kind of throughout the day. So I saw it as like a huge need that needed to be addressed, that I could address uniquely with my skills. And so I just built that kind of from the ground up, and it's done really well, you know, as far as like, I love to educate people. I think that's, again, like going back to what is something that you or your brand can do that other people can't. And, you know, that's an area that I know well. So I just needed to say, I'm going to showcase this. It wasn't like I had a big plan around it, or I had like been like, oh, this is going to be like a huge driver. It was like very specific problem solving, something that I'd seen repeatedly with training clients that I thought, hey, I think this would be helpful for people. So ultimately, if you are trying to think of products or ways to improve things, like if you can look at something and say, I think this is really going to help people, it's probably going to sell really well too, and really help your business. So if you apply that kind of framework to things, is like, does this really help solve a problem for people? Especially nowadays, again, think about the internet. It's got to solve problems quickly. So if the protein calculator can say, hey, Felix, this is how much protein you need, and be specific, you know, like don't water stuff down. Like, I definitely made that much more in depth than I thought people would care about. I was like, look, I'm just going to put everything I can into making this, you know, as good as I can and as accurate as I can, and not water it down. I think people focus a lot on, you know, you think about big brands and they try to do a one size fits all. Like, again, like, know that it's okay. And there is a big enough market for you to get specific. And, you know, if you like, you know, do whatever, you know, if you're making shoes for Tango and that's all you do, like, that's not a small market. You know, you can be really specific.
Yeah. And when you have this business running and you have your site running, what kind of apps or tools do you rely on to keep it going?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say I think it's always important to kind of, the same idea with where do you get ideas for how to make innovative products. And I think if you look at other brands in or outside your industry, it can be really helpful. So I think going to other brands, and you can kind of look at what other apps they're running, that has been really helpful. So if you see, you know, a brand, like, the best thing I did was just think about brands that you actually transact with, and you're like, why do I, you know, like this brand, or what are they doing? And just kind of look at what apps they're using. So one of my favorite apps is called Segments, and it's kind of like a more advanced app, I guess. And I'm certainly not the most data driven person out there, but if you have people on your team that are good with that, Segments is a great app. And shout out to John at Segments, a great company, and they actually care, and they'll talk to you and help you through your stuff. So I think that's helpful. Klaviyo, you know, we had MailChimp for a few years, and then getting someone that can actually help you kind of build out Klaviyo. Again, like, you know, if you're running your business and you're a small team, which I think most people are when they start out, like, know where you're good at things and know where you're not. So I'm not going to be coding something. Can I write the copy for an email? Yeah. But do I know how to like manage all these apps to their full potential? Because a lot of the apps like can do some amazing things. So bringing people on for that. The Shopify Reviews app is great. It works. And then like a loyalty rewards type program. Smile is one that we use that I've liked. But, you know, when you think about kind of bringing some stability to your business, if you're in the business of a recurring type subscription, like a loyalty program or subscription type app is super helpful to kind of give you like a baseline, and, you know, from projecting, you know, production volumes and things, but really to build loyal consumers. And if you have aspiration for your business in the future, whether it's continue to grow or you're trying to eventually sell it to someone, like the subscription component is something that you can't ever start, early enough. Like it's a great base that people care about.
Awesome. So promixnutrition.com is a website, and the biggest lessons that I'm hearing from you in this interview was around simplicity. And then in the areas that you have simplified down to, try to be the best in those areas. So I'll leave this last question. What is an area that you are working on being the best in next?
Man, I think in general, finding balance in life. That's a really broad answer, but I think if anyone is building their own business, you should be like fully involved, and you should probably spend an inordinate amount of time on it. So finding a balance, working with great people, like should really, find people you really enjoy working with. You will have better results if you really like enjoy working with them and they're on kind of the same wavelength. I really do try to improve Promix. Every day I want to be the best out there in the industry, and again, touch wherever the customer touches. Like, can you do a better job? That's the basics.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience, Albert.
I really appreciate it, Felix.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Shopify Masters, the e-commerce podcast for ambitious entrepreneurs powered by Shopify.